Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this Idaho Farm Link webinar. This webinar is part of Cultivating Successes Your Small Farm webinar series. We started this webinar last winter and we're running it through the end of 2018, and we will have a whole new set of webinars coming in 2019 as well. So again, thank you for joining us. Today's presenters are myself, Colette DePhelps. I'm a community food systems area educator with the University of Idaho Extension. Amanda Snyder, who's the Cultivating Success Program Coordinator for Idaho, will be running the chat today. And if you have any questions about the program, you can always type them in there. If you're having any difficulties, Amanda will help you. Our other presenter is Marci Miller, who is the Executive Director of Rural Roots and a small farmer here in Moscow, Idaho, with Deep Roots Farm. So we all are located in Moscow, and we're happy to connect with you all around the state. Before we jump into our topic today, I just want to go through a few webinar tips. Sometimes your bandwidth can really be eaten up by webinars. So if you have any problems with speed, definitely close all the other programs on your computer. And if you're having trouble with your sound, generally that's because of your internet bandwidth, and you may want to use a telephone call-in, and that number is provided in your welcome email. Definitely mute your computer sound if you decide to use the phone, otherwise you'll get feedback. You can type questions in for Marci and I at any time throughout the webinar. We do have some specific slots where Amanda will read your questions. So if you could indicate in your question if that is a question is specific for Marci and I, that would be great, but we'll both jump in with our answers. And then you'll see in your control panel that there's 3 handouts for you today, and you can download those handouts at any time. One of those handouts is the complete slide set that we're showing you today. Another one is an Intro to Land tenure resource list. And then the final one is a lease agreement guide. So definitely take the time to download those onto your computer. If you have any problems with that, at the end of the webinar, you'll see my email address. You can just shoot me an email and I will send you all of those handouts. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about today's focus. So we have just launched a new version of Idaho Farm Link. We had a prototype that we did a webinar about last March, and since that time, we've taken a lot of feedback, done a lot of beta testing, and really improved the site. So we want to introduce Idaho Farm Link and how it works. We want to help you decide if you're ready to seek land or provide land and list in Idaho Idaho Farm Link. We also want to share some keys for making a successful farm link. So we're going to be talking about land assessment, lease agreements, and the importance of trust and personal connections. We're also going to provide you with a lot of resources and some suggestions for next steps. So again, you have these slides in your handouts, and you don't have to worry about writing down all of the text we're showing you. So we want to start by doing a poll of who is in the audience today. And I'm going to launch this first poll. So if you want to take a second just to vote with your cursor, 1/4 of the people on have voted, now 75%. I'll give it a couple more seconds. You just want to take a second to vote. Okay, great, thank you. 100% people voted, and I'm going to share the results. So as you can see, about 1/4 of our participants are just planning to farm. We have 1/4 of our participants that have been farming for 1 to 10 years, another 1/4 that are technical advisors, extension, or other educators, and another 25% that are academic faculty, researchers, or professors. So it's great that we have some resource people on, because we do have a way for resource people to list within our Idaho Farm Link, and Marci will be showing that later. And we're definitely excited to have some potential and beginning farmers on today. Okay, I'm going to close that poll. And we have a second poll because we'd like to know where you're located. So I'm going to go ahead and select that poll. Give me a second, it's just taking a little bit of time. There it is. Sorry about that delay. Now I've launched a poll for where you're located. 25% of the people have voted, now half. Give it a few more minutes. 75%. Just give it a couple more seconds. Okay, 75% have voted. Okay, I'm going to close the poll and share the responses. So as you can see, about 2/3 of the folks on today are from North Idaho, and then we have about a third of our folks from Southwest Idaho. So again, welcome. Okay, jumping in, I'm going to transfer the mic over to Marci, and I just wanted to let you know that as you can see, Marci's picture is up in the top corner of your screen. And when we change presenters, we are putting our picture up there so that you do know who's speaking to you. So with that, Marci, I'm handing it over to you.
Thank you, Colette. I'm really excited to dive into this idea of farm-link programs. They've been around for maybe 6 or 7 years, with some states or some regions really spearheading the way of this, recognizing that Craigslist or wanted ads in the newspaper weren't cutting it for farmers, especially beginning farmers who were seeking land. These tech-savvy beginning farmers were looking in other places online and really looking for a way to have this database of connecting with people who are land seekers or who are land owners. So these farm-link programs really facilitate this farmland transfer. Farm-link programs are generally free of charge, as is Idaho FarmLink. There's no cost to participate. It's really our service to experienced farmers, to beginning farmers, and to landowners of Idaho to offer this service, because we know that farmers are retiring at a rapid rate, but we also see that there are many beginning farmers who didn't necessarily grow up on farms looking for farmland. So we really want to help facilitate this retiring farmers transition to beginning farmers. And there are a number of different ways to do that, and we'll be going over some of those a little bit later in the webinar. This FarmLink program is really to help limit the loss of farmland and production. Many farmers who are retiring or looking how to transition out of farming are often approached by developers, real estate developers. And in many cases, that feels like the only option for some of those farmers. So this is a way to give farmers another option who are really passionate about seeing their land continue to stay in production and help transition that to the next generation of farmers. I'll go to the next slide. So we know that farmland occupies about 40% of the privately owned land in the United States, but what happens when that land is no longer farmed? We're losing about 500,000 acres each year of good productive farmland to development. So these programs are stepping in, trying to stop some of that development when there's really good farmland, especially when it's adjacent to cities or communities that are hungry for local food, which we know is a growing trend across the United States. 3/4 of new farmers do not come from a farming background or farm families with access to available land. So how do we facilitate? This has been a question that has been going on in farming communities. How do we facilitate this transfer of land? And this is a startling statistic. For each farmer under the age of 35, there are 6 over the age of 65. So this rapid transition is underway. And we see that nearly 500,000 farmers will retire in the next 20 years. So it's a dire situation looking at it from the big picture, but when we look at it at the local level and at the state level, there's a lot we can do, and this is just one piece of that puzzle. Next slide. Colette, we don't hear you.
Thank you, Marci. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of Idaho FarmLink, and this is what the Idaho FarmLink page looks like. And you'll see the URL at the bottom so you can reach that after this webinar. The history of Idaho FarmLink, the need for something to connect land seekers and landowners actually started way back in 1997 and 98 when the University of Idaho Extension and Rural Roots started to collaborate to offer small farm programs. In 2000, we partnered with WSU to establish the Cultivating Success program, and we have always had a very robust evaluation process. And at the end of all of our beginning farmer courses, we asked the beginning farmers, what are the top barriers that you see to becoming a small farmer? And access to land was always at the top. And we also received over the years multiple inquiries about finding and leasing and selling land. So we were able to obtain funding in 2015 from the USDA Beginning Farmer Rancher Development Program to develop Idaho FarmLink. And in the process of researching how to develop the best platform for Idaho, we found that a lot of people didn't know how successful FarmLink programs were. And we wanted to create a FarmLink program that not only linked to land seekers and landowners, but connected into the resource people in different areas. So as you can see in this picture, we have three different icons. We have a green land seeker icon, a blue land owner, land provider icon, and then a red icon for resource people. And we'll be really working to get a lot of more resource people on this map. So if you are seeking land in a certain area, you know who to contact to talk to you about how to make some local connections. So as Marci talked about, there's a real priority within our state and across the nation to have successful transfer of agricultural land. And so our program is designed to help land seekers and landowners connect. We really want to help beginning farmers find land. We also want to keep land in agriculture. And in any way possible, we want to assist with farmland transfer from a farmer or rancher that's experienced to a beginning farmer. So we've created the central place for listing. We work, as I mentioned, to facilitate connections. If you do make a listing on Idaho FarmLink, not only will this be displayed in our map, your listing, and you can see on the right side of your screen what a land seeker listing would look like or a landowner listing would look like, the type of top level information. We will also let an extension educator or other resource partner in cultivating success know that you have linked. So people that are in the area that you're looking for land, or you have land to share, we'll let them know. So if they're going to get calls, they know to direct people to your listing. We wanted to share that there's a number of neighboring FarmLink programs in the Pacific Northwest, and our FarmLink page prioritizes Idaho, and we do have a little bit of flexibility in listing in our neighboring states, but we do want people to make sure to know to go list in the state where they're looking for land. So the Tilth Alliance, which is based in Washington State, has a FarmLink program. Montana also has a FarmLink program that also includes a mentee program. If you're looking for a mentor, you can post that on their site. Oregon FarmLink is one of the FarmLink programs that has done some follow-up, and they have made over 70 land matches since 2009. And in Oregon, there's also a farmyard land link where people are making their urban yards available to people who would like to farm in the Metro Portland area. So now we're going to go ahead and walk you through the process of making a listing on Idaho FarmLink. And to do that, I need to change the presenter from my screen to Marci's. And so there will be a transition. And Marci, you can now show your screen. So at this point in time, everybody should see Marci's screen that says Idaho FarmLink.
All right, let me know if at any point that disappears. So this is a live version of Idaho FarmLink. And when you first go to the page, these headings right here will be a little bit different. It's going to be ask you to create your listing. It's a really simple process, and it's going to take you through filling out your personal contact information, and as well as a full application, whether you're a land seeker, a landowner, or a resource person. You can choose which application you would like to fill out. At this point, we don't have ability to have people fill out multiple applications. So if that's something that you're interested in, as far as I'm a land seeker and a resource person or what have you, give us an email or a phone call. You can always contact us at info@cultivatingsuccess.org. But I wanted to just show some of the really cool elements of this new FarmLink website. So as we scroll down the page here, you see this live map on the right and listing types that you can filter. If you know exactly what you're here for, you can filter the types of applications that you would see. So the three types of resources are the landowners, the land seekers, and the resource people. So if you're a landowner and you would like to see who is looking for land, you can click on this type and give it a second here to think about it. On the map, you will see all of the applications for landowners. Now I can show full screen view here and zoom in so you can see that there is a land seeker here. Hey, look, I recognize that person. And I can click on that link and it will bring up my profile. And if we go back to view all listings, the other way that you can look for people who are active on the site is here at the bottom. So these are the recent applications. Now, one tip if you are new to applying to the site, the more often that you come back to your application and update things or add more pictures or change maybe the areas that you're looking in, adding more counties in which you're looking for land, your application will go to the top of this list. So I just updated my profile this morning, and so my profile is right here at the top of this list. Now, after the webinar, I'm going to go ahead and hide my application because I'm not actually looking for land right now. But I'm going to click on Katie, who is in Coeur d'Alene, looking for land. And you can see that basic statistics about what she's looking for, the places she's looking for land, and the acreage that she is looking at. So in order to contact Katie, you will click on this link, but you're actually not contacting Katie, you're contacting Idaho FarmLink. So myself, Amanda Snyder, or Colette. You'll fill out this information with your message. It's going to send us an email saying, hey, I'm interested in talking to Katie. Can you facilitate that conversation? And so that's really how we are keeping track of who's connecting with who, and also keeping people's information private until they're ready to share that information with the person that they are connecting with. We're really interested in keeping that information protected for a number of reasons. But I wanted to take you to, once you create your listing, you can come back and log in and view and edit your listing. So you can see here at the top with my picture where my location is, the counties in which I'm seeking land, in air quotes, and the size of the land. So that's what your public profile looks like. Now down here below, you can change information. You will see here that the information that will be published clearly states that. The information that is not published also clearly states that. So your address, your phone number, your email will not be shared until you give us permission to share that information in making a contact. The other note that I will make is your PIN does not automatically show up in your listing. We've tried to find some fancy way to make this happen, but unfortunately it's just a little glitchy. So when you create your listing, once it's approved, usually takes 3 to 5 business days, you'll receive an email that your listing is now live on the website. At that point, you'll come back to the website and go to this edit your listing. You can enter information here to place the pin on the map. You can enter anything as vague as Idaho, and it'll just place your pin kind of in the center of Idaho. Whereas you can see here that I've actually entered Latah County. I can enter Moscow, Idaho. I could even enter a street address if I would like to do that. But know that this is public information, so that people will see that. The other really cool feature that we added was being able to add additional photos. So especially if you're a landowner, you can add pictures of your operation as it is. So people can really get a sense of what you have and what you're offering to them, to those who are seeking land. So you can really create this gallery to give people a sense as they're looking through the listings. Then at the very, very bottom, I'm not going to scroll all the way because I'm afraid it might make you seasick to see all this scrolling. You'll want to make sure to save all of that information. There's a big button at the bottom to save that information. So are there any questions at this point about any of the things that I've shown you? I'll give you just a second here. All right. Well, it's a pretty user friendly. We've tried to make it as easy as possible with lots of help from our team members to click around and really get a sense of what applications are here and who's doing what. But always feel free to contact us if you have any problems or questions at info@cultivatingsuccess.org.
All right, thank you, Marci. I'm going to go ahead and change presenter back to showing my screen. And you should see right now the Idaho Farm Link website screen with Marci's picture.
Yep.
Just double checking that that is what you're seeing. Okay,
Yes.
great. And here we go. I'm going to double check and see. We don't have any questions still, but we have a second or two that will pause, see if anybody has any questions. You can type those in at any time, and we have another Q&A session a little bit later. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. We are going to do another poll. We're just wondering, based on how you're feeling right now, how ready do you think you are to seek or provide land? If this doesn't really apply to you because you are not a land seeker or a landowner, you are a resource provider, then you can just say none of the above. We'll give a couple seconds. 75% of our participants have voted. Give you a couple more seconds. Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to close the poll and share the results. So we had one person, I think, or a couple people that said that they're almost ready, about a third of our audience, and we had 2/3 of our audience that said they're not probably seeking or ready to provide land at this point in time. Thank you for taking that poll, and I'm going to go ahead and move to the next slide. So Marci, if you'd like to take over.
All right. So as you're thinking about becoming a land seeker, for those on the call today or who are watching this later, there can be a lot of questions. So just brace yourself for a second, thinking of all the questions that you have right now, and I'm going to add a few more to that list here. So, the magic of PowerPoint presentations, there's a whole long list. Um, you know, really sitting down with yourself, if you're a solo enterprise or with your partner who you are interested in farming with, and really asking yourself some of these questions. They're big questions. They can evolve over time. I know that when we first began farming, my husband and I began over 10 years ago, these questions have definitely evolved over time. And so really creating a business plan, an outline. What does it look like? What does our farm operation look like in our minds right now? What experience do we need to gather in order to feel really confident to go out and lease land or purchase land in the future? Um, if Have you determined if leasing or buying is feasible? This is a really big question for beginning farmers. That in my experience, we leased land for the first 7 years, and we actually still continue even after purchasing our small in-town farm. We still lease land on other people's land. So there really is no one way to figure out what works for you. And so we offer Cultivating Success has a series of classes that can help you really start to answer some of these questions and determine for yourself what the answers to some of these questions, but it changes over time. Next slide. So, like this said, taking a class or several classes, developing a 5-year and 10-year plan, taking Cultivating Success courses. There are other wonderful courses offered throughout the state through Extension and other organizations. And one of the best things that we did is we actually also met with the SBDC, which is a Small Business Development Center, and it's located in different offices throughout the state, but they are incredibly helpful. It's free information with market research and assessment. So it's really, looking at all of these different pieces: the land, the production, the planting, the planning, and the enterprise. And how do you funnel what it is that you want to do into finding that perfect piece of land? Next slide. So same for the land providers. What are some of the questions that you need to be asking yourself and your family about what this process might look like for you? So it's another long list of questions that are really important. What is the long-term vision for your land? Do you have current uses that may be compatible with certain types of farming activities that somebody might be interested in? If you are a large-scale dryland crop producer, is there an acre of wet bottom ground that somebody who has livestock would be interested in? Where are the pieces of land that might be good for specific things, and really starting to identify and talking to your extension educators in your county or your NRCS or USDA offices locally, to help assess what land you have available and what it might be good for. Um, Things that beginning farmers, land seekers might be asking you as well is water available, especially if you're doing crop production or livestock. That's an important question to be asking. Other infrastructure, if there is infrastructure on your land that's available, what are you willing to let those people use? You may not be willing to let them use all of the infrastructure available. So really getting these things in writing and figuring out what the value is and what you're willing to work with. And are you willing to mentor or advise? Is it something that you have a thriving flower farm and you are willing to help transition beginning farmers as you transition out of the active farming piece? Are you willing to help new farmers be really successful as well? Next slide. So we do offer, as part of Cultivating Success, a workshop for land assessment, and we have new curriculum that we're excited to begin sharing in the spring. So if you're interested in learning more about land assessment workshops and what might be offered in your area, please contact us, and we'll connect you with somebody in your area who might be offering a workshop. So this is a workshop that is on farm. We try to find farms that are willing to have a group of people out and really do some hands-on assessing of looking at soil structure, looking at soil types, looking at the land topography and water access, and having the participants of the course really walk through the steps of assessing that piece of land. It's a really fantastic course. Next slide.
Thank you, Marci. I'm going to say a few words about leases. You do have a handout that hopefully you've been able to download that is a lease agreement guide for landowners and farmers. And what we found is that many people do a verbal agreement, and oftentimes they do that because it's uncomfortable to talk about the particulars of a lease, and they feel like, oh, we're friends, we both like farming, or we feel like we understand what we want from one another. And then later on, something shifts and changes, and because there's not a written agreement, some conflict arises, and sometimes that conflict can have dire consequences where somebody might lose access to their land, or even in some cases end up in a legal situation. So we highly recommend that people go beyond a verbal agreement and move forward. Some people do a letter of agreement, which is not a formal lease, and that has worked for them. It's not quite as deep of a dive, but we really do recommend that you do a full lease agreement. And when we get to the resource pages, you are going to find links to sites that have actual sample leases. And if you decide that you don't want to go down the road of a full lease agreement, at least you might identify by going through those leases some things that are very important to you to put in that letter of agreement. So you really need to do your homework. You need to be clear about what you need, and if you are a land seeker, and what you expect if you are a land provider. And really, if you write it down, it's going to create a great opportunity for conversations and really strengthening the relationship that you have between the person that you are leasing land from and the person that you're leasing it to. So again, please consider writing it down. We think that it's going to save you money, it's going to save you heartache, and it's going to make your whole experience much more positive. There's a long list of things that actually go into a good lease. One thing is the description of the lease property. What piece of the property does people have access to? What's the term of the lease? What do you want in rent? Is it a cash rent? Is it a crop share rent? Is it a service agreement where in lieu of a cash payment, you're going to do some land management on a broader piece of property? Who does maintenance and repairs? At what level can you alter the property by, putting in buildings, putting in fencing, water systems? And if you do put those in, who's going to pay for them? And is there any expectation that if you stop leasing the land, any of that infrastructure that you have put in would be removed? What about liability? Who carries liability on that piece of leased land? Is that the landowner, or is that the leasee? And taxes and assessments, is that something that is going to be the responsibility of the landowner, or is that something that for the portion of land that's being leased is actually going to the leasee? So as you can see, going down these different components of a good lease, this is why a letter might not be enough. You might really want to use an existing template and be able to use that as your discussion piece. And it also makes it quite neutral, because when you are using an existing lease structure, you're not in any way doing anything where you might feel like it's uncomfortable because you're inferring that somebody might create an issue on your piece of land or might not be fair in that lease agreement, you're just going through a neutral document and talking about the different provisions of that lease. You also might need to engage the service of a professional, even an attorney, just to review that lease and make sure that you didn't miss anything. And so we definitely recommend that you do that, and we think it'll be a good time and dollar investment. So a little bit about what Idaho FarmLink is not. Idaho FarmLink is not a fully vetted listing of land seekers and landowners. We do have a pretty comprehensive application, and if we saw something in that application that might indicate somebody wasn't ready to seek land or to lease land, we'd follow up with them and have a conversation about that. But no matter what, you need to have your conversation with people that are listed on Idaho FarmLink, because we don't have a vetting process. And so this is an introduction, and the responsibility lies with the land seeker and the land provider to really carry that introduction to a deeper conversation and decide whether or not they want to move forward with exploring a land lease or land sale relationship. This is not the only way to find farmland as well. As Marci said, people are listing on Craigslist. Oftentimes there are realtors who are listing farmland, or farmland is going up for sale and people are learning about it word of mouth. There's tons of ways to find farmland. This is one tool that we are excited to be able to offer in Idaho, but definitely not the only way. We do have a land access webinar that we have recorded that takes a much deeper dive into accessing farmland and things to think about in terms of your own readiness to be a land seeker or a land provider. So as you can see, there's a link to our website where that recording is, and I'll show you that again later in the webinar, but please take the time to watch that webinar. What Idaho FarmLink is a place to connect. It's a place to become visible, to learn what land's available and find people who might want to lease and buy your land. It's a place to network through cultivating success, to meet University of Idaho Extension educators, to be connected to rural roots, to learn about resource people that are in your community that you might not have known were there. And it's a central place where you can go and keep your listing live, and you can remove it if you actually do make a match. Also on the Cultivating Success website, you'll find a host of educational resources, and that's another bonus of kind of keep refreshing, come back to the website because we're updating it all the time, and there will be additional information that will be helpful to you as a land seeker or a landowner. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Marci to talk about some of the resources that are out there.
Thank you. So you can see here, there is a laundry list of resources. This is a topic that a lot of people are working on, not just us here in Idaho. So there's some really good national organizations that have provided some really great information. The Agrarian Trust and the National Young Farmers Coalition have done an extensive amount of resource gathering. So even going to their websites, you're going to find more resources than I could possibly read through in getting prepared for this. It's a really incredible amount of help out there for people who are seeking land or who are looking how to transition their land to the next generation. Land for Good is a great resource. They offer a really comprehensive curriculum about land assessment, land transfer, along with American Farmland Trust, is a really trusted organization. The USDA has new farmer programs that provide not only resources but also access to low interest loans for qualifying beginning farmers. So that's definitely something to look into if you're interested. If you have some years of experience under your belt and are really ready to really take the leap into purchasing land or looking at what your options might be. And University of Idaho Extension offices, there's one in every county. They may not have the exact expertise in their office, but they should know who to contact to answer your specific questions. Colette is an advisor for the 10 northern counties in Idaho, so she's a great resource for northern Idaho. And there's a lot of information that can be had within those offices, or they know who to contact. Rural Roots is an organization that is really farmer focused. So our focus is really supporting farmers through education as well as networking. So this picture here on the right is one of our monthly networking events. We brought in a number of professionals in the community, realtors and accountants and CPAs, to answer questions that farmers might have. So that's really our line of work, and we're happy to share resources with anyone who's interested. Also contacting your local USDA Farm Service office, your local NRCS office. Those folks are really boots on the ground, have a pulse of what's going on in your area as well. So those are great contacts. Also your local or regional land trust. We have a wonderful land trust here on the Palouse that has done a lot of work with farmers in preserving land for agricultural use in perpetuity. Forever and ever, that land is going to be an agricultural land use. So they are also wonderful resources to get a sense of what is going on in different areas. Next slide.
Great. Thanks, Marci. And I just wanted to say, we had a beginning farmer that through the Palouse Land Trust actually found her farm. So it's pretty exciting, remarkable farms. That's how they found their land. They had been on a search for quite a long time, I think a couple of years, and then they had an introduction and now they're starting their small farm. So it's pretty exciting. This is the Cultivating Success website. Here you'll see on the front page, we have a couple buttons about our featured programs this autumn, our webinar series, and a direct button to go to Idaho Farm Link. So do we have any questions that have come in, Amanda, about FarmLink?
We don't have any questions so far, but if you have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat box.
Great. I think that there was a question about whether or not FarmLink is for people selling land as well. And it absolutely is. When you list as a land provider, you have the option to say if you're interested in selling your land or if you're interested in leasing your land or a portion of your land. So it's definitely for people that are selling land. And if you're a land seeker, you'll want to check out whether or not that is a sale potential and or lease potential in the land that is listed. Okay, well, let's talk about where you can find some more resources within the Cultivating Success website. So here's our page with our 2018 webinar series. As you can see with this green circle, our next webinar is on direct marketing. It's November 12th, and Jen Werlin, who's a University of Idaho Extension educator in Teton County, will be leading that webinar. And then as you can see underneath our current webinars that are coming up, you'll see that there's the links to recorded webinars. And here's the link to the land access webinar that Marci and I did last February. So we definitely encourage you to check out what's available online. And as Marci said, we'll be looking at doing some more land access education this coming spring, most likely in April. And if you are interested in signing up for a course that does a much deeper dive into understanding financial readiness for both leasing and for buying land, looking at goal setting and how to do land assessment, shoot us an email at info@cultivatingsuccess.org, because we're really looking at where we're going to make this education available and how we're going to do that to meet the needs of the most people across the state. So we thank you very much for being on today's webinar. And here's my contact information and Marci's contact information. We do have a quick post-webinar survey that we really would appreciate your completing. It will launch as soon as we conclude this webinar. Again, we're resources here for you to support you. So please contact us anytime, and we thank you and hope you have a great day.